Sometimes you come across a number that's so shocking, it just stops you in your tracks. Well, today we're looking at a story that's really defined by just a couple of those numbers. And it all happened in the blink of an eye.
The first number you need to hear is 260.
And that's the total number of people who tragically lost their lives. It's a catastrophic number that includes everyone on the plane. And just heartbreakingly, people on the ground as well. But then there's this other number, and it's the one that makes this whole story so baffling.
Just one.
In a disaster of this magnitude, there was somehow a single survivor. So how is that even possible? To understand, we have to go back to the beginning of this tragic event. What we're diving into is the crash of Air India Flight 171. It was an incident that took a completely routine departure and turned it into an almost unbelievable tragedy in less than a minute. Okay, so let's set the scene. We've got Flight AI 171, a modern Boeing 787 Dreamliner. It's June 12, 2025, and it's heading from Ahmedabad to London. On board, you have 230 passengers and 12 crew members. And from everything we know, it all seemed completely normal. But the entire tragic story of this flight, it's all contained in its final 32 seconds. I mean, that's barely enough time to even register that something is wrong, let alone send out a mayday call. It's an almost incomprehensibly short amount of time.
32 seconds. That's it. From the wheels leaving the runway to complete disaster.
The plane came down less than a single nautical mile from the end of the runway. It crashed right into a hostel at the BJ Medical College. And this explains why the loss of life was so devastating, not just for those on the plane, but for those on the ground too. Now, this is where the story takes a really sharp turn. Investigators, they didn't find a long, complex chain of failures. No, they zeroed in on one single baffling cause. And it's something far more direct and, honestly, far more mysterious. The entire investigation is now centered on this one component, the fuel control switch. The easiest way to think about it is like the ignition key for your car. It's not the gas pedal, it's a simple on or off switch. It tells the engine either get fuel or get no fuel.
It's as simple as this. In the run position, everything's normal. Fuel flows, the engine works, you get thrust. But if you move that switch to cutoff, the fuel flow stops. Dead. The engine just flames out. And in the case of Flight 171, the data recorder showed that the switches for both engines were moved to cutoff right after takeoff.
And that, of course, put a huge spotlight on the cockpit. The voice recorder actually captured the absolute shock of the pilots in those final seconds. You can hear one of them asking the other what was going on. It really seems like they were just as stunned as anyone would be. So how did they get to this conclusion so quickly? Well, in any crash investigation, you start by ruling things out, right? You check off the usual suspects. And in this case, every obvious cause they eliminated just made the real reason even more mysterious. The weather? It was perfectly clear, so that was ruled out immediately. And what about a bird strike? I mean, the plane was flying low, but nope. Investigators found zero evidence, no physical damage to the fan blades, no organic material. In fact, both engines, even though they were silent, showed signs they were actually trying to restart just before impact. So this leaves one absolutely terrifying question. How did both of these fuel switches get moved to the cutoff position? I mean, aviation experts and the investigators themselves say that for this to happen by accident is, and this is a direct quote, highly unlikely. You have to deliberately pull and turn these switches. It's not something you just knock with your elbow. So, while that massive question mark hangs over the investigation, the focus on the ground has been on the aftermath, on recovery, and on trying to grapple with the immense human cost of those 32 seconds. And the final toll is it's staggering. That one person on board who miraculously survived, they were the exception to 241 others who did not. And the tragedy didn't stop there. It claimed another 19 lives on the ground and injured dozens more. A total of 260 people lost. In the months since the crash, there's been a slow pushback towards some kind of normalcy. The preliminary report came out in July. Air India started a phased restoration of its international routes on August 1st, and they're aiming for a full resumption by October. So, operationally, things are moving forward. But that central question, it hasn't gone anywhere. And this is the question we're all left with. You have a state-of-the-art aircraft, experienced pilots, and clear skies. So how could an action so simple, so deliberate, as flipping a fuel switch happen at the single most critical moment of a flight? The search for that answer is still going on.